In today's Excel tips, we will cover how to calculate hours worked with Google Forms and Microsoft Excel. We have a form that collects location, name, and clock in or clock out type. So here they can choose clock in or clock out, and then they submit the form. After this form is submitted to Google, it gets an automatic timestamp that we can use to create this chart here. And we have it grouped by the name, so that we can see the in time and the out time. And then we have subtraction, hours, and minute. So this subtraction is just to the 1 minute, and this is round down or up the nearest 5-minute mark. Before we begin today's Excel tips, I want to make sure you get your hands on our new guide called 30 Minutes to Connect Google Forms to Excel for Live Reporting. The video and guide are an all-in-one extended video teaching for beginners or long-time spreadsheet users. I've also included a step-by-step checklist to follow the video. In about 30 minutes, you can create a live Excel report using the inputs from Google Forms. Plus, you'll get the exact method I'm using for a landscape company to submit, calculate, and report hours worked per week and pay period. So why create this on your own time when you could use the hours I've already spent on this solution to your advantage? Again, you can find the link in the description to grab your free guide today. So let's take a look at how we can group and use timestamps for calculation. I've already created a query here, but if you had data in Excel, you would just click on this data somewhere, click on the Data tab, and then go to From Table Range, and that will open this query editor the same. Like I said, I already had this created, so I'm just going to click on Queries and Connections. And on the far right, I'm going to double click on our query. So one of the first things I want to do is check this timestamp row and filter out any blank entries. And currently there are none, so we don't have to worry about that. Sometimes when things are imported, there will be rows of blanks, and we could just filter that out. Then I want to create a conditional column where we have one row of clock in and one row of clock out. But I don't need the words clock in and clock out. All I need is the timestamp information from each of these. So before we do that, I need to sort this data, and I want to sort it by name. So select the arrow here, and I'm going to select it ascending. Now we have that, and it's almost correct, we can see. But there's one more thing. I want to then sort it ascending by the timestamp. So now when we look at this, we see clock in, clock out, clock in, clock out, clock in, clock out, and that's in a better order there. Right here, we could just create a pivot column step, and what that would do is create any columns with the names of your drop down. So if I had clock in, clock out, it would give me 2 column names, clock in, clock out, and then we could select the values as a timestamp. But when we do that, there will be some errors for blank values. So instead, I want to create a conditional format, and the way you do that is go to Add Columns. So click on the clock type, then we're going to click Conditional Column. And if the column name is named clock type, and it contains the word in, this is case sensitive in here, so I'm going to type capital IN, then I want the output to be the column timestamp. Else, I want it to be null. Again, null is not time sensitive, is case sensitive, so we're going to put that in lowercase. And now we have our custom column. One thing I forgot to do is to name this column, and I want to name this in time. And then I want to add another conditional column for our out time. And we want the timestamp, else we want it to be null. The reason we're adding that null is so that we can do the next step, which is fill up or fill down the data. So if you were to fill down the data, it would just take this and fill it in where all the nulls are below it. So this 9, 8, 12, 24 would go to this null, this 9, 9 would go to this one, etc. Same with fill up. If we wanted to fill up from here, this would fill up to the nulls above it. Okay, so I'm going to do that step and show you what will happen. So we go to the Transform tab, We go to fill, and we want to fill up. So now you can see that we have our clock in time and our clock out time for each of these, right? And it looks pretty good. The reason it looks good is because I currently have even data, meaning I have the last item in each person's name is clock out. We go down to Jesus here, you see that's clock out as well. And the dates add up, 9/14. All you have to do, the next step, is to remove these nulls to get a better picture of it. So we see that this looks correct, and then all we would need to do is subtract the out time from the in time by selecting both of the columns. Select the one that you want to subtract from first, and then go to, we want to add a new column. On the far right here, we can do a time column, and we want to subtract. Same thing, if we select the two, we could subtract the number of days. And right now, of course, it's 0 days. And we can name this time subtraction. Days, you're just double clicking here, days subtraction. So again, it looks good. However, I'm going to add a new entry to our form, and I'm going to clock in, submit it. Thank you for your submission. And while we still have this open, we can refresh the preview if I gave it enough time. And you see where it moved. And we had this negative 23 days. Well, we know that's not correct. So what happened? Something happened here when it filled up. And you can see here there is October 2nd to 9/8. And if we go up to this here, we can find that entry, and you can see there's two entries back to back right here where it changes from one person's name to the next, and we have two nulls. So this is going up 2 places, and that's why you're getting that. So what we want to do is make sure that we add a step here, and we can just keep all this below for now, and we are going to insert a new step to group by. From the home tab, right in the middle, group by. Yes, we want to insert, and this will break, as it says, it could cause your query to break. It will break it sometimes, so make sure you know, and you're doing it step by step here. And we want to group it by the name first. I'm just going to call it group name. The operation, we could sum it, average, all those things, but we just want it to return all the rows of data. And we select OK. And now we see it grouped by the name here. When we click to the right of this green table name, we can see at the bottom here is the data from each of those tables. And now at the bottom here we have the correct. We don't get that extra, the next person down. This is where it was coming up, was between Gentry and Jesus here. So now you can see every other one is blank, meaning when it fills up, it will fill up correctly. We'll just go down the table here. Okay, now one issue could be right now we only have a clock in for myself, and we'll just see what kind of calculation it gives when it subtracts in time minus null. We'll see what happens there. We want to borrow the logic from the next step here. We're just going to copy this all the way before the equal sign with Control C, highlight it, and Control C. Go back up to this grouped rows, and right here where it says group name each, we want to delete this underscore. That's actually a variable, so we're going to use that here in a minute. And we are going to paste in that step that came from this filled up section here. So what this is, if you're not familiar with Power Query, is each of the first steps. So if we look over here, we have the function that we're going to use, and then we have the previous step is mentioned. So this previous step was added additional column 1. So it has the ampersand quotes, added additional column 1. We're no longer going to have this as a step. What we want it to be instead is that underscore, which was a variable, and we're just going to put that in there. Then when we hit the check mark, We now have our table grouped by, and it went ahead and filled up the out times here. So this looks correct now. And we can delete this step filled up because we don't need it anymore. It's combined in that group rows. I forgot to, so the next thing we need to do is expand these here. Got ahead of myself. So hit this expand button. We want to expand everything except for select your column, and we don't want the original name as prefix. Insert the step. And now we have our columns and rows back. So the next thing we need to do is remove those nulls, but we've already done that previously. So this should, when we click on that now, it's correct. And our other steps are still in there. So here is what I was talking about. We have someone who clocked in. They have not clocked out yet. And so it gets a null value. And that's okay. I don't mind it. You could write logic for it to say if null here, then you want the words clock out or not clocked out yet, or pending clock out or something like that. But I know this is usually the only reason we're going to get a null here. So let's look at a few more of the ways that we can calculate time. One thing we can do here, we can go ahead and make this into time, these two here. And you'll notice the days has not changed. In this example, we actually will always have 0 days because it's always going to be clocking in. People don't typically work more than 24 hours. But I put that in the video because you might want to look at it for something else. Let's go back. When we click on timestamp, you could add another column with the year, the start of year, end of year, and the same with each of these. So month, quarter, week. I do want the start of the week because this is for payroll, and it's nice to know when the first Sunday of that payroll period begins. So now we have the start of week, and this time I don't need the time, so I'm just going to change this to date only. Like I said, you can keep this days here. We don't need it for my purposes with the timesheet. So I'm just going to delete it. I'm going to right click on it and remove. I could also go up here and remove the step. Now it looks pretty good. I want this select your name just to simply be name. I don't need this timestamp anymore, and I don't need this clock type anymore. So I'm going to control click those two. Now I just need to right click again and remove the columns. Okay, so we are going to close and load this to our sheet. So I loaded it back to the same where we had the example. So in the example we have name, location, start of week. Name, location. So it's a little different order, but you can see here where we have everything we need to create a timesheet. I want to make sure you get your hands on our new guide called 30 Minutes to Connect Google Forms to Excel for Live Reporting. Again, you can find the link in the description to grab your free guide today.